Indiana of Destiny is the fifth film now in the 42-year Indiana Jones franchise. For the first time, not Steven Spielberg directing, James Mangold, who directed Ford versus Ferrari and Logan, notably, stepped into the director's chair. This is the first Indiana Jones film with no Steven Spielberg in the director's chair and not having George Lucas having a story credit, creating the story for this film. This is the first Indiana Jones film in 15 years since the highly divisive Crystal Skull. In this one, Harrison Ford plays Indiana Jones for the final time. In this film, he is retiring from both being an adventurer and also a professor at his university when his goddaughter, Helena, played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, re-enters his life looking for the very famous dial, which can turn back time and send you back to change the course of history. After this is Dr. Voller, played by Mads Mikkelsen, who is a Nazi trying to rewrite the history of the German World Wars. The film is 2 hours and 34 minutes and is PG-13. Welcome back to a brand new movie review here at Max. We're talking about the highly anticipated Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Ring the bell, do movie reviews, TV show reviews, movie rankings, and box office breaks and show every Monday. So please subscribe, ring the bell, comment down below. Lino, are you a big fan of the Indiana Jones franchise? If you're not checking this one out this week in theaters. If you did, just tell me non-spoilers. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Did it disappoint you? Is it worse than even Crystal Skull? Let me know in the comment section down below. Also, please like the video, guys, a thumbs up button. Before we get into this video as well, I do want to say that I will be doing a full ranking video for the Indiana Jones movies on Monday. So stay tuned for that ranking video of all 5 Indiana Jones films, which leads me into my overall opinion. This is one of my favorite franchises of all time. It is obviously one of the best trilogies of all time. In that 80s with, you had Raiders into Temple of Doom into Last Crusade. They're just fantastic films. And then Crystal Skull for me is just a really bad movie that has good ideas in there, but just are executed poorly. It's like with the one Spielberg movie that I watched. I just cannot believe that he directed it. And I think a lot of us, I was very excited for this movie, even though it really got torched when it debuted at Cannes a couple months ago. So let's get into my thoughts, my positives, the negatives, and then my score. So overall, I do think this is a much better movie than Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. Now, while it doesn't even touch the heights of the Indiana Jones trilogy in the 1980s, this movie does have a lot of good moments that makes this actually feel like an Indiana Jones movie. And I think James Mangold did a really good job putting you back in the saddle, feeling like this is an Indiana Jones film from start to finish. Obviously, the biggest positive is that Harrison Ford is back as his character. He usually does not sleepwalk through performances, and he does not, obviously now you can tell how much he cares about this character that he has now played now for over 40 years. And it is still iconic as ever, but the reason why it's still iconic is that Harrison Ford is terrific in the movie. There is different dimensions, and I actually really enjoyed his character arc in this movie. I don't want to get into it because it's not in the trailer what his really true emotional arc of the movie is, but I really enjoyed his arc, and it felt like the right place to continue his character after Crystal Skull. I felt like the right spot to continue. But overall, again, he is terrific. He still has those comedic chops that he's always had. He has a really serious note. He has a lot of emotional moments, especially towards the last 15, 20 minutes of the movie. He is terrific. And even when the movie sometimes isn't that interesting or boring, he is on screen making it quite watchable. So he's still the MVP. Again, when you don't have Lucas or Spielberg here, he's still one of the MVPs of the 4 key people who put this whole franchise together 42 years ago. I think Phoebe Waller-Bridge is solid in her role. The rest of the performances are solid, nothing too fantastic from any of the other performances in the movie. It's really great to see John Rhys-Davies return as Sallah, who also he wasn't even in Crystal Skull, has not been in this franchise since Last Crusade in 1989. And I think what the most surprising part about this movie is that this movie does have a bit more of an emotional thing than I was expecting. And I had chills for multiple points of the movie. I just never felt those type of emotions since since as a kid watching Last Crusade. I rewatched all 4 movies leading to this one. But I grew up watching all those all 4 Indiana Jones movies all the time. And Nothing, Crystal Skull just didn't feel like anything emotional was going on. There were no stakes. And this movie, while I don't think the stakes are super high, I do feel like there is a lot of more emotional depth in this movie, which really carries it for me, especially the last like 10 minutes of this movie. I had chills, and it was easily the best part of the film. Um, as a whole, also, this is John Williams' final score of his obviously superhuman career that has spanned so many decades. And once again, he also never sleepwalks through a composing. He doesn't just playing all the same themes as usual. He plays them at the right time. It's a special score for me. I think right behind Star Wars for me. This is my second favorite John Williams score from a franchise point of view, and I just adore his Indiana Jones score once again. He brings. I also think the movie looks really good. I think the biggest problem with Crystal Skull is the kind of the CGI fake look that it has. I think this movie has a lot more realistic look, which I'll get to as one of the problems with the movie actually in a second. But overall, I had actually a fun enough time with the movie. But let's get into some of my negatives. With my negatives, I do want to say again, I really like Phoebe Waller-Bridge in this movie. It's not her fault at all from an acting performance point of view, but it's just not a character that I think that was written very well. Helena is the goddaughter of Toby Jones's character Basil from the opening prologue to this movie, where we get de-aged Harrison Ford, and she is very much written to be very unlikable for the first half, maybe even 60% of this movie. And I think when she kind of turns things around and she really does start to care about this 80-year-old man, by the way, who's risking everything for her a lot of the time, the movie then kind of starts to click back together. But she's too unlikable for the first nearly half, even more so, of the movie. And it's a character that it's so frustrating because she brings it to the movie. She's excellent. She commits to the action scenes. And she does have great chemistry with Harrison Ford. But the character itself is just, first of all, not that interesting of a character. And she's very unlikable. And once you turn it around, you kind of start to root for her, but she just didn't overly win me over by the end of the credits. So I really thought that character was very frustrating. I thought Antonio Banderas was cashing a check in this movie more than that character is actually that interesting into the film. Mads Mikkelsen plays a character that he plays in his sleep. This is a character you've seen him play in a billion other movies. And while indie films are not known for their fantastic villains, I like the idea of the motive for Mads Mikkelsen's character. But for me, it took way too long into the movie to actually know why he's doing this, other than he's a Nazi. It took way too long for them to explain his motive. And for me, at that point, I was already checked out of his character. Now, the other thing is the de-aging. I'm just not a big fan of the de-aging used. It's really just in the opening scene of this movie, the prologue. And there are certainly shots that look fantastic. But when Indy is moving or they go really close up on it, it just doesn't look really good. And it just, for me, pulled me out of the prologue. I think the actual prologue had some of the best action of the whole movie. But because you have this de-aged face, which sometimes looks good, most of the time doesn't, it just kind of pulls me out of the movie and the realism of what's going on. Because there's times when they're on top of a train and it kind of just looks like a video game more than it looks like actually Harrison Ford going up against someone on a train. It definitely pulled me out of the movie. And I was off to a rough start for me with the movie. And I think the movie gets increasingly better. Even though I think the second act is bloated with a bit too many action scenes in there. And as I said, I think there's a lot of emotion with Indy's character, and I love the callbacks, but a lot of the other side characters just aren't interesting at all. The actor who plays Teddy also is good, but it just feels like they're trying to force feed you Short Round 2.0. And I didn't feel like that character was necessary whatsoever. So this movie is very frustrating for me because there's elements that I do love in this movie. There are ideas that are very interesting. Harrison Ford is fantastic. There's not that one notable action scene, which I think is missing. And there's definitely something missing from a spark or just in the movie that does not even touch the original trilogy. But overall, this is not a bad movie at all. It's very watchable. I do think the runtime 2.5 hours was a bit much, but overall, my thoughts are it was a fine movie. I enjoyed it a lot more than I think most people did. But overall, I'm going to give Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny a 3 out of 5 stars. I'm going to go 64% for Indy 5. What are your thoughts in the comment section down below? Stay tuned. My ranking video will be out on Monday. I'll see you guys soon.